The brutal police response created a public fervor that led to the legalization of homosexuality in New South Wales. And since the early 2000s, Rose has worked alongside Sister Helen to end the death penalty. And she also writes about art and social change and has won national awards for her journalism. So if you would, let's welcome the three of them. Are you mic'd up, Helen, or not?
Oh, can
you hear me now?
Yeah,
you hear me if am I close enough? No, maybe not.
maybe a little closer, yeah.
Should I move it up or should I be awkward
Move it
the entire time?
Yeah.
It's kind of funnily on with my.
It's funnily on? What kind of adverb is that? Funnily on.
And I think I'm on. Am I on?
Oh, it's Rose on, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, maybe I'll just try.
Yeah, we'll look down like this.
We can hold it.
Just while we wait here, just a few words. You know, this is the last iteration of Dead Man Walking, because you had the book, 93, paperback, 94, Susan Sarandon read it, 94. They had the film by the end of 95, Oscars, 96, Susan got it. Then we had the opera. And so now we have the graphic. Y'all, the only thing we don't have is the ballet Dead Man Kick. So if any of y'all know people in modern dance, we're open. We're open.
I would say go ahead.
We're good?
Yeah, okay. Just so briefly, I got involved with the death penalty because I came to understand the gospel of Jesus, that we to do justice, not simply charity. And that led me moving into the St. Thomas housing projects and working at a place called Hope House. When I grew up in the Jim Crow era, the only way I knew African-American people was as our servants. My daddy was a successful lawyer. I lived in the big house in the front, and we had African-American servants. I didn't even know their blooming last name. They lived in the servants' quarters. And Mom and Daddy were kind, but I never heard the word justice. Jim Crow was wrong. I mean, black people had to sit in the back of buses. I never went to school with African-American people. I had no peers or neighbors or friends as African-American because of the way segregation and the Jim Crow laws worked. And that's brought out beautifully in the graphic, and we'll get to that. But then being immersed with people, African-American people in New Orleans, and I saw all the rules were different. The way the police treated people, what happened to you when you went to the school, you'd come and you couldn't even read a third grade reader, and I'd gotten the best education, college, just like you. And then that led to one day, a friend at the Louisiana Coalition on Jails and Prisons said a simple little invitation to me that's going to change my life. Hey, Sister Helen, you want to write and be a pen pal to somebody on death row? And I said, sure. And that brings out Sneaky Jesus too, because I ended up being with a man when he was executed, and that led to everything because I witnessed it close up. All my books have eyewitness account. And now you get to hear the dynamic, 6 years of work, y'all, that went into the writing of this graphic. Rose, the writer, and Catherine, the illustrator artist. So we can start talking.
That's the old version, isn't it?
I did certain things.
It's the old version.
Yes, so I just going to say, first of all, thank you so much for being here. And we have a different PDF than what we were going to go off of. So we might do a little bit of clicking back and forth and ad-libbing.
Yeah.
I'm just asking them to open their book, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I should have a book in front of me that's out there. So I can take the clicker so I can, will it work from my desk or?
I don't, it doesn't seem to be. Why don't I'll you tell me and I'll click it for you.
Oh,
Just point at Tom.
okay, but I don't know what's, okay.
Yeah, you don't know the order. Let's just
No.
let it roll.
Yeah,
And
Because there's plenty good stuff to
Sorry?
talk about.
with the same, sorry.
Well,
There's always something.
No, I have the version that Rose sent me this morning.
Oh,
And that's
okay.
the correct version.
But that one can't be plugged in. You can't
just put
plug
this
in.
We're not getting it on the flash.
I could just put it here.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe I could just use the,
You could do it from your computer.
sorry for the technical issues.
No. Don't worry. I'm a university lecturer and not a day goes by.
How about this?
There we go.
How about this? We'll just use it for my laptop.
Yeah, if you do it on full screen, I think that's
Yeah.
great. Then go back to the beginning.
Beginning, yeah.
Thank you.
Hold on, I gotta open up here.
All right.
Open it up in the reader.
I think it's like this, or is this in Chrome? I see.
Yeah, I wanna get out of
Yeah,
Chrome.
okay.
We'll move around over here so I can
Oh.
see.
Oh,
I'm gonna be close,
all right.
just so that I can see.
She's never looked at it. All right.
Are you
Helen.
getting a book?
There we go.
Okay, here is it on the,
If we can just do the green button
yeah,
there.
no, make it large.
I think that was on full screen.
There we
Yeah,
go.
I think that's perfect.
Yep. Should we have the, oh, we guess we can't have the
So, yeah.
light on.
And the clicker works?
I think the clicker will work.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, so here we have a backdrop to Sister Helen describing her entry of awakening into her subject.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Ah,
Yeah, maybe
let's
Rose-
start
yeah.
with this shockingly out of sequence or picture. So this is how it started. So Sister Helen was recording the audio versions of Dead Man Walking and River of Fire in 2019. And the Random House producer who was there with her in the studio said, is there a graphic book? And Helen said no. And she said, I think Random House would be interested. So Helen rang Random House and said, are you interested in a graphic version of Dead Man Walking? They said yes. And she rang me and said, should we do a graphic Dead Man Walking? And I immediately said yes and assumed that I would write it because Helen was pretty busy, and partly I was also desperate to write it. And also I knew, although we both didn't know much about graphic books, I knew I was probably more grounded in the format. And we went off to Barnes & Noble and immersed ourselves in the MAGA and graphic section over there. And I also immersed myself in reading people who talk about how to write graphic scripts. And what we knew we needed was an illustrator because neither of us is capable in that. And so I started looking around, and there were all sorts of wonderful things. And I was particularly looking at people who'd done nonfiction, like Nate Powell, who's done Congressman John Lewis's March series. He's also recently done Lies My Teacher Told Me, graphic versions of those. And I looked at a bunch of people, and then I came across that book, Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, which I'd hated at school. And I opened it up and I was really amazed by the illustrations, even though Catherine will tell you that it's a terribly bad printing. The Scandinavian printing is much, much better than that one. And so I thought it was fantastic. So I searched for her online. I found her website. It was broken. So I tracked her down on Twitter and said, your website's broken. And the reason why I know that is I'm looking for an illustrator and, not sure if it'll work for you and for us, but we'd like to have a chat. And Catherine was very open because she's already does work that for social change. And so we had a Zoom. I'm not sure if this is our very first Zoom. I don't think it is. But anyway, we had a Zoom and immediately Sister Helen started in, thanks for agreeing to do this book with us, Catherine. And Catherine and I didn't know that it would take 6 years to do the book. And so we we all got started. So that was in 2019, and there were a number of things that I knew straight away that we needed to do, because Sister Helen's book describes how she accompanied two men to their execution at Angola, and both in the electric chair. And so in the book, you've got these stories of two men, but in the film and the opera and the play, those two men get crunched together and form one character. And I didn't want to do that because it was fictionalizing the person or the people who are central to it. I felt it, I understood why it was done for artistic purposes, but I felt we worked quite closely with victims' families, and I felt it did a disservice. I've heard some victims' family members say the man on that film, in that film, was not the one who killed my friend or my loved one. And I wanted it to be closer to reality, what happened. And also the first guy that Sister Helen accompanied, a man named Patrick Saunier, it's quite easy to feel for him, to be compassionate for him, because he was very remorseful. He's quite likable. He did a horrible crime, multiple crimes, but you can feel for him. And that sort of allows the reader to think, well, okay, it's terrible that we executed him. But the second man, Robert Lee Willie, was horrible and unlikable and racist and violent and unrepentantly violent. So I wanted to have both those people in the book, because it makes it harder for the reader to decide where they are at the end. This is not supposed to be a book that says you're going to be against the death penalty by the time you finish it. It's a book that says, how do you feel now that you know more about the death penalty? And most Americans don't know much about the death penalty at all. So how do you feel now when you finish this book? And you might be against the death penalty, you might be for it, you might have no clue, but at least you will go on a journey and you will know a hell of a lot more at the end of it than you did at the start. Helen, do you want to mention about this page?
Well, let's let you and Catherine get into the process of how you fed text to, and Catherine, you're entering to this with us.
Yes.
So where do we start with the text? So Rose had this huge job of taking the prose and converting it into something which was sharing space with images. And so we passed ideas back and forth, and at first Rose was a little bit stressed because you were describing what to put in every panel. And I, as a visual artist, the reason you work with visual language and text is so that you can use sort of the vital things about how people take in images and how people understand visual language to communicate. So for me, it's very important that I was deciding what was happening in all of the panels. And I'll talk through a few of the pages later on. But what Sister Helen has said before about this page and what the book is about for us, for you who read it, and for us who made it, and for Sister Helen is about the being a witness. So we've now witnessed this book 3 times over. And
just to add here, because it's a secret ritual. How many of you know how many people we've killed in Louisiana, and you are never going to get close to it? It's done behind prison walls. I feel like I fell down a laundry chute. I've been a witness. That's why we tell them the story. Okay, continue.
And this kind of witnessing was a part of how Rose made the structure of the book. Maybe you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, so in this page, this is Sister Helen on the left, looking at photos of the convicted men, the condemned men, and their victims, and And on this page, I hope you can see it, it's a bit
Is
dark.
it possible to turn up just these lights, or is it
Over here, sorry.
Yeah,
On this one?
so demanding?
you are.
So you can see better. There you go.
Yes,
Is that all right for the video? And so you can see on this that we've got Sister Helen looking at those photos. And on the branch outside, you have an owl and an ant. So one of the problems with the book and redoing it was published in 1993, and here we are, 30 odd years later. And how do we make it relevant to now? What's the same? What's changed? And so I introduced a couple of marginal characters, I called them. And the first is the oracle, which the oracle provides sort of future history. So if you're reading about a Supreme Court decision that happened in 1976 or 1984, oracle can bring you up to date about what's happened since then with that decision. What statistics are, what they were then, what they are now. And the ant, which Sister Helen dubbed Piss Ant, is there really as a sort of sardonic commentator. And both of them are featured throughout the book. And there's a third character who is Albert Camus. And he always appears with a little blue halo around him. And in the original Dead Man Walking, Sister Helen talked a lot and quoted a lot of Albert Camus, who wrote an essay called Reflections on the Guillotine. And so she quoted a lot of him. And so we had him more, once again, as an observer and also almost in conversation with Sister Helen. And so those three characters add different sorts of links in the book. And your imagery, of course, brings in a lot of the present, back in, that was current, like the treatment of young black men.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And the oracle and the ant, they take different forms depending on what kind of image we're working with. And one thing about the book is it's full of a lot of very dense legal writing and describing cases with the language that you have to use for those cases to understand them. And we wanted to see how we could try to help the reader to immerse themselves in this kind of legal landscape. So, for example, on this page, they're talking about the stages you go through with appeals, right? So you go through the trial court, the state court appeal, federal appeal, and then the Supreme Court. But you can't go back. So I designed it as this sort of game where each gate was a little turnstile, and that's what is described in the book, to kind of try to use a metaphor rather than just the information. And I think we have another, this is a bit more normal.
Actually, Helen, you talk a bit about this one and about the cases.
Yeah, okay. Well, you have into the book, Millard Farmer gets introduced. When Pat was about to be executed, I heard about this appeals lawyer in Atlanta, Millard Farmer. He becomes the teacher of me. I'm learning all through this because I didn't know Pasquale about any of this stuff when I got involved. Okay, when Tim Robbins was doing the movie, he kept saying, the nun is in over her head. And I was. So understanding the system here, and one of the things that Millard explained to me, and it's a question for you, how do you have this happen? In 1974, the Supreme Court abolished the death penalty, found it unconstitutional, said because the way the death penalty was like being struck by lightning, it was completely arbitrary. You could never predict who would get the death penalty. 1972, Furman.
Yeah.
4 years later, Supreme Court put the death penalty back in the Gregg decision. How in the world did that happen? And this brings you there. It brings you there because the southern states, you got to always look at the effect or legacy of slavery on the death penalty and harsh punishment. So the southern states were furious at the feds for enforcing desegregation. They were furious about that. And there was backlash to the court about what they had done. And they wanted the death penalty put back. We want to punish our criminals the way we want. Then by 76, you have the Gregg decision happening. And we've been operating out of that ever since. And when you look into it, I've come to understand this better and better with all the different people I've been with who've been executed, with how the system works. And the Gregg decision did two things. They wanted to make it appear fair so it wasn't arbitrary anymore. So they said, only reserve the death penalty, not for ordinary murders, but for the worst of the worst. And who does Sam Hill know the difference between, well, this was an ordinary murder and this one was the worst of the worst. So it's completely arbitrary and up to individual people. And then they gave huge discretionary power to prosecutors to seek it or not. Who's doing the executing now? Most of the country has shut down the death penalty. Look at our deep South states, and it's up to prosecutors who get political points. Our own governor, Jeff Landry, ran on, we're going to get this death penalty going again. Claims he's going to do it for the victims' families so they can have justice. But it is operative in our state. And that's why it's really important for us as citizens to get a hold of this. So that brings us through the changes that happened in the court. So, Catherine, you want to take it from there?
Sure.
With the bobblehead.
With the bobblehead. So, like as you can hear from Helen, there's so much information and there's so much documentation that we have to get through. So I wanted to give the reader a sort of a passage through it, which was not just verbal or not just prose. So this is a long section. It's about 8 pages, where we're going through all these different cases and how the legislation has changed over the years, and what the Supreme Court justices have to say. So I decided to have a long shelf over the 8 pages, where I'd have little elements or icons or objects which somehow related to the cases that were being discussed. So, for example, here the pills is we're talking about on the previous page about medical execution and the different kinds of concoctions they work with. This on the left here, it's describing the execution of Joseph Wood, and that was a crime where a baseball bat was involved. Then we have the owl in a different form. And then I also found this company that makes these Supreme Court bobbleheads. And since there was a lot of quotes from them in the text, I thought they could be on the shelf as well. So I wrote to them and asked, can I draw them? And they said yes. So they're on. So the shelf is kind of a walk through all this dense legislation with a.
And whenever a Supreme Court justice is speaking, like Alito and Sotomayor, it's the words from the case. So that can be quite dense, how lawyers speak. So we also have little explanations of what's going on. And the ant is interjecting half what he's saying. And then Sotomayor answers with a dissent, and that's from the philosophy Gross, her dissent. And as you'll see, these are post Helen's book. So her book came out in 1993. So these are all future history pulled in 2014, 15, and 19. But on the beginning of the shelf, a few pages back, it's in the 1800s, so it goes all the way through. And Catherine's drawings sort of make it much easier, palatable to read the decisions of the Supreme Court, which are sometimes hard to digest for many reasons.
We were also very conscious that we wanted this book to be grounded in reality, to make it very clear that this was non-fiction, and to do that we used a lot of documents that we could find to integrate into the illustrations, to kind of give a sense of time and place as well. And I'm going to talk a bit just in general later about how I use visual language, but here's an example. For example, with illustration, with graphic design, you're organizing information on a page to communicate something. So Helen starts to read through these cases when she writes to Pat, so she gets all the information about the crime, and she starts to read through it, and she describes herself as feeling completely overwhelmed by the weight of the information. So I've sort of got all the headlines sort of bearing down on her in a kind of oppressive way and sort of imprisoning her. And so that's how I like to think of working visually, like what can you evoke sensually from the images that is said in one way in the text, but it doesn't need to be replicated in text in the book. Let's see if we have some more documentation.
Yeah.
You want to talk about this?
Yes, so we got very detailed. There's so much research in this book because we have Sister Helen's research and all the footnotes in the original. We have my research and we have Catherine's research, and we delve deeply into original sources. So we spent a lot of time in the Sister Helen Prejean papers, which are held at DePaul University in Chicago. Huge collection there, and at LSU and various libraries. And we have things here like an invoice for the sponges that are used to moisten where the electrodes are put in an execution by electric chair. And it's an actual invoice, and the same thing with the diagram of an electric chair. And over this side, we have the police records of George Stinney, who was the youngest person ever executed, a young, poor black child who had to have a book set under his legs to be able to sit on the chair, and was convicted by an all-white jury in great haste. So we have the actual documents there. So when you're going through the book, the documents help you realize this is not, like most people think of graphic books as graphic novels. I mean, it's why there's the term graphic novel. Graphic novel does not really apply to nonfiction. It's not a novel, which we always think of as fiction. It's graphic nonfiction. We want people to know that this is not a made-up thing. It's what happened.
But also, I think with using real documents, I wanted to kind of show the contrast between this banal, bureaucratic way of recording things, which conceals the horror of what's actually behind them. Because, you look at an invoice, and that doesn't explain the horror of the mechanism by which the electricity is passed through the body. So we wanted to use or undermine these documents, to use them, against their will in some sort of way.
Yeah.
Where are we now?
Yeah.
We should be a bit quick.
Yeah. Should we move along?
Move on?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, I can talk about this page. So I said I wanted to explain, and also for the visual arts, I hope there's some visual arts students here, like how I make decisions about how I organize the information on the page to enhance the storytelling. So in this spread, Sister Helen is describing how she was 12 years old the first time that she witnessed violence against a Black person, and this woman was kicked off a bus. And so in the graphic novel, you have panels which have borders, and the reader's expectation is that those borders remain whole. But so when she's being kicked off the bus, I also have her being kicked out of the panel to create a sense of discomfort. And she's being kicked out of this panel into this landscape of a lynching, based on a famous photograph of a lynching. So she's exiting a safe space and becoming part of a horrific landscape. Then I have the tree here, and on this side we have the lynching happening, and on this side we have Sister Helen being pushed by her mother on a swing, and her mother explaining that, honey, they like to be with their own kind, and we like to be with ours. And so what I was trying to illustrate was this disconnect. So by having her swing from the same tree that the lynching is occurring on in a sort of surreal way, I'm trying to show that the willful ignorance or the innocence or the looking away that the woman is doing there, it's the violence and the innocence and the ignorance is happening in the same landscape, and the ignorance and innocence is complicit in furthering or keeping the status quo of violence. So it was well fun. It was interesting for me to try to explain things through images, and it's not something that I think people are going to sit and sort of decode as they read, but I think it's what I call invisible storytelling. So it enters in a different way. I think I can do it from here.
You're just timing out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So yeah, I wanted to put this landscape of comfort into the same landscape of terror. And here we were just talking again about how convoluted the systems are when people are trying to get themselves out of difficult situations. And in the book, it's described. It's a gorgeous passage. She's talking about how many I can't remember now, but like how extremely difficult the systems that are in place to help people are to navigate. So I thought I would use this Escher staircase, which goes nowhere, which leads you down different paths and dead ends and this kind of thing, to explain the sensation that I got when I was reading about the mess that the system is from Helen.
Just one little thing
Yeah.
here. Once you enter into appeals, like Manuel Ortiz, we're writing his story now. He's been on death row 33 years. It'll be 6 years waiting here, 8 years working here. And it all depends on how good your lawyer was.
Mm.
And if at the trial they raised a formal objection, like here's a black man, all white jury, the lawyer didn't object, so there's no room for appeal there because you said your lawyer didn't object to it. And years and years and years. So Manuel's been on death row 33 years. He's innocent. So we're writing a book now out to the public, hoping that maybe it can influence public officials or whatever to get the man out. 33 years waiting.
And at least, by a very conservative estimate, at least 4% of the people on death row are innocent of the crime that sent them there. And a number of Supreme Court justices, and I'm thinking of Scalia, who is now not with us, have said essentially that they're fine with an innocent person dying because the system of the punishment, capital punishment, needs to be in place. And if one person or more than one person who is innocent dies, that's okay, because mostly we'll be getting those who really need to be executed.
I think maybe we'll skip a few because
Yeah.
we may be running out of time.
And,
sorry.
You know, and we could go straight to questions if you
Yeah.
like, but
I was also interested in how you use material and layout and people's sort of inherent knowledge of different kinds of materials. For example, lined paper, when someone is trying to figure out how they're going to survive on these food stamps, but also how to describe how the US was building prisons and prisons and prisons. And again, that's connected to the bureaucratic nature of lined paper. Here, this was a story about a man called Willie Francis who was sent to the chair twice. It did not work the first time. And this was a story that I kind of wanted to expand a little bit in the book. So we did a few extra spreads for it and using sort of a scrapbook format because all this information was in so many different places. And I read this long article about his mother. And I kind of wanted to produce a small section which gathered everything I could to kind of try and remember him within the book.
should we skip ahead to the victims?
Yeah.
Right at the end?
Yeah.
Maybe Lloyd? Oh,
We can start the victims here, maybe. I don't know.
well, I think we could go on and then get the questions because we don't want to. We can always come back. So I love this. This is one of my favorite pages in the book. And on the left, you have David LeBlanc, who was one of the young people that Patrick Sonnier murdered, lying in the field. And on the right, you have his parents in bed, Eula LeBlanc sitting up, and Lloyd LeBlanc, his father, lying awake in the same position as David. And Sister Helen has always said that Lloyd LeBlanc is the hero of this story, and he really takes you through on a journey. You'll find him in many places along the book because Sister Helen, after making many, many mistakes with the victims' families and not realizing how she needed to reach out to them, it was Lloyd LeBlanc who taught her how to do that and that it was essential. And it's Lloyd LeBlanc who we end the book with. Should we go ahead?
So just to be clear, Lloyd
Oh,
LeBlanc is the father of one of the victims of.
young David LeBlanc.
And this is actually the final page. And we have David in the field when Lloyd went to identify him. And then on the right, it's Lloyd thinking of all the things he'll miss about David. David as a young man, David growing up, David having his own children, all those stages of life. And he talks about how forgiveness is a daily struggle. Even though he'd said that he forgave those men, when he was in the field, I forgive whoever did this. But he said it was a daily struggle to keep that in his heart. Yeah.
And the key thing about that for him was he realized that the anger at the men, Pat and his brother who had killed David, was eating him alive, and he was losing the kindness that he had always had. So he saw, even if you look at the word forgive, it means to give before, not to let the hatred and anger overtake him. It was a way of saving his own life in a way, to forgive. But every day it had to be prayed for and struggled for and won. But that's why I call him the hero of the book.
I can just talk a little bit about Lloyd as well, because so in the book I use color. I'm normally very black and white, as you can see from there, but I use color as a way to bring in different times. So when someone is thinking of someone else, when something's happening in the past or something's happening in the future. For example, here, Sister Helen is driving home across the
causeway.
Contra train.
That's very good for a Swede. Okay.
And she's ruminating on a visit that she's just had with the parents of another victim. And she's thinking about Faith, who was their daughter who was murdered. So I have Faith in the car with her in color. She's thinking about how angry Vernon was. So I have him there also, I think, in a different sort of layering color. And here, at the end, when Lloyd is thinking about his son, he's obviously not there, but he's in color to sort of talk about him being in a different sort of plane. But in this image, this image is before he's found that forgiveness, and before he's found that, well, whatever kind of peace he found. And so what I wanted to do here, because here is his son lying in the field, and here he is lying in bed. And I have them in exactly the same position, which in cinema is called a match cut, when something is, like if you've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, they throw up a thing and then
A bone.
it becomes a bone, and it becomes space. So it's a visual transition that links two ideas ideologically. So what I wanted to express here was that he was really stuck with his boy in that field. He was connected to that time and place, and that was where he was. Here, he's gone through the process of forgiveness. He's able to imagine his son growing up. He's able to be outside of that field and live his life. But what we've been saying in the other talks as well is that when you see like newspaper documents, when you read a story which has an end, you think of horrific events as an isolated thing or as a moment. But it's very important to remember that it's an everyday, things go on forever. And as it says at the end, each day forgiveness must be prayed for and struggled for and won. So I think I wanted to get out in the book that it's not just a chapter that closes when something gets resolved in the courts or in some other way. It's something which is present and mundane and ongoing in everyday life.
No, thank you. We have plenty of time for questions and answers about the story, and go to Helen or to the creators too. Ryan, yeah.
I was actually curious on page. This is kind of a question for like a artist and scriptwriter, and on page like 62, when it's talking about some years like backstory, and mentions.
We're a little louder, Ryan.
Sorry.
When he has a memory with his father, and he picks a whiskey, and he says, "I'll take that one with a pretty turkey right there." Was that maybe a subtle reference to Susan Sarandon and Thelma and Louise? Is that intentional?
I'm glad you uncovered that link. Now we will say that was intentional.
Totally.
That's my
Susan
shooter, by the
would
way.
really get a kick out of that.
Yeah. He actually liked wild turkey. So, but yes, beautiful.
No, but I mean, he was just a kid with his daddy in the bar. They're gonna get drunk together. And he says, "I want the one with the pretty bird on it." That's how he picked his whiskey. It was just he was drawn to it. And everybody laughed, of course.
I mean, the thing I like about the book, I reread it yesterday and the day before, and is that you can sit with the page. Like, I've seen the movie and it's very moving, but not only does it condense two characters and you get a totally different ending in the movie, but you can't sit with it. And I can sit with Helen's original book, but it is very dense in places. It's like reading Moby Dick and skipping the whale stuff. I have to skip some of the court stuff sometimes, right? But in this one, I think what the genius of the graphic version is that I didn't find myself skipping those 8 pages that Catherine was talking about, Rose were talking about with the courts. It was actually juxtaposed perfectly, like, okay, I could take a break from the story and some of the drama in the book to then step back and see how is this fitting the bigger picture of the system and the legal system. For 8 pages of pictures, I can do that. It's more difficult. And I'm 55, so my point is, I think one of the reasons they wrote the book, and this was intimated earlier, is to reach a whole new generation that can, and does read these, these kinds of mediums. And it does something different than the other ones have done. And you can linger on a page like Ryan is. She's lingering on that page. She's going back and looking for connections. And that's what this does in a pretty brilliant way. So sorry, yeah, other questions? Right here, yeah.
Hi, I teach operatic literature here. I mentioned that earlier. So my question is regarding, obviously, Dead Man Walking has been adapted multiple different ways, artistically, musically, or otherwise. And my question is, what role does art play in discussions, difficult discussions about social justice? And perhaps if you'd like to specifically talk about the opera or otherwise, of course, we would very much appreciate it.
Well, I'll be glad to do that, and then we get back to this graphic. I didn't know or realize the importance of the role art plays. See, the big thing is with executions being secret, and then you only read about them afterwards, is you need art to bring you close. So the movie did that, and then what the movie did was the last line across the screen in the movie was Tim Robbins put, "Read Sister Helen Prejean's book." It bumped the book out there. So now I think we've reached over 800,000 copies of the book. And I know when people open the pages of a book, your imagination's at work. That's a way to bring people close. But like when you see the opera of Dead Man Walking, you got live drama going on, and you have music that instructs the heart to bring you through the journey. And with all the different characters in the opera having a different aria, different leitmotif or theme, and it has huge impact on audiences. So you have the movie, the opera, but I love what Mark was just saying, and it's really true with this. to get through the legal system, I didn't know anything about the legal system, but you can hover on a page and you can look at it and it can begin to make sense. So we need knowledge, but we need imagination, and then we need passion. Wait, this is one of the great moral wrongs of the century. Most people say, yeah, death penalty is okay. But you're going to be brought into the deeper journey of it, and then finally it hits conscience, hits soul, and now what am I going to do about it? Am I going to participate in the movement to end it? Or, oh, just very interesting book, and you put it down and nothing changed?
It's also, I think anybody who's worked for social justice organizations or whatever knows you can give people all the statistics in the world about how unjust the system is, how completely broken it is. And it's like, well, you know, that's how the world is, that's how society is. If you give them stories of people who've been damaged by that system, it completely changes how they feel. It brings their heart in. I don't know if any of you have read Calvin Duncan and Sophie Cowell's book, The Jailhouse Lawyer, which was recently published. And Calvin lives here, and Sophie too. And Calvin was incarcerated in Angola for 28 years for a crime he didn't do. And while he was in Angola, he taught himself to be a lawyer, and he also helped so many hundreds of other people with their cases. This is my button. He's now running for clerk of criminal court, and anyone who could vote should vote for him, because he understands the withholding and inability to get his records was part of why he stayed in jail for that time. And reading his story, you'll get a completely different understanding of the unjustness of the system and what happens to poor people, and mostly poor Black people. And that's why story is so important, no matter what form the story comes in.
But in terms of art and the story, it's also sort of how it enters the reader. There's been a study done in a Swedish university called Chalmers, which looks at the retention of facts and memory of different things. So what they found that when we look at pictures, we form a different kind of memory. I think it was called declarative memory, and I don't know what the other one was called. And that memory remains in your sort of perception for much longer. And so I think just the fact that we have a book which tells the story in prose, but also accompanies it with images, we hope that it remains in your body for a long time. And Sister Helen, you have such a good quote. What the eye doesn't see.
Yeah, this is from Latin America. What the eye does not see, the heart cannot feel. And so that's been my mission, because I've accompanied 8 human beings to execution, and I've witnessed it. And you know what my hope is? Because I've traveled this whole country, that when people are brought close to it, they go, oh, I didn't know it was like that. That people have good hearts. They're not committed to the state executing people. They just don't know much about it. And people do change. What the eye doesn't see, the heart can't feel. This whole thing, bring us close. It's true about all the deep moral issues of our day. Bring each other close. And I'm helpful because I didn't know boo scat about any of this. I mean, Tim Robbins, nuns in over our head. So when I wrote Dead Man Walking, people can follow the story like, well, let's see what happens to the nun. She didn't know what she's doing either. And that becomes part of the story. I'm not an expert that publishes a book that I'm an expert on the death penalty and people start fighting you. Well, the nun doesn't know what she's doing. Let's see what happens to her.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm the chair of the design department. It's a really beautiful, well-designed, smart book. I'm curious what the method to your madness is when you design this, in the sense of like when we design books in the design departments, we pick master pages and we have a grid, and we definitely do not design every spread, right? And so you talked a little bit about that some of the spreads thought about the concept and how the form would appear.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering how you decided to do it in sections. Did you like come up with like, I want to make sure I have some things that bleed, some things in grid? Like, what was your kind of method to this? And I'm also wondering, I mean, it did take 6 years. I mean, I feel like this took a time. And you can talk about that a little bit.
Okay. Thanks. So in terms of the design, I do have a grid, like a 6 by 6. Oh, I don't know, but I'm not a graphic designer. But I always tell my illustration students, because illustration students are afraid of graphic design. I don't know if it's the same here, but I've always been afraid of graphic design, and I've always had my students have the same feeling. But I always tell them that illustration and graphic design are not different. They are about making decisions on how you present information on a page to communicate something that you want to communicate, and they know how to do that in their own way, but they don't associate it with typography or grids. So I guess I could call myself a graphic designer, but in terms of spreads and panels, I mean, it's not every page has like lots of intellectual layers of how I've decided to do everything. Sometimes you just need to move the story along. But I try to make sure that there's quite a lot of intensity. So the double page spreads are there to provide a pause or to slow you down. So you might have gone through a lot of action, and then I kind of want to bring you back into sitting with the page, looking at everything around. And then in terms of like my thought processes, in terms of how I make the images, this is what I tell my students as well, is you need to think about what your tools are as a visual artist. You have color, you have form, you have scale. Like how big something is on the page means something very different to us sensually than if it's very small. The weight of the line, the texture of the line, it's a rough line, we get the sensation of anger. If it's a very clean line, you get something more clinical if you contrast things. So I want the sort of the physical sensation to be brought out through the visual language. And for me, it's quite automatic. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do this and this. But I try to teach them to think about it while they do it, so it becomes sort of a instinctive way of working. And it's the most fun part for me, like to think. For example, with the prison. So the prison is like a character in the story for me. In Sister Helen's book, and from the research I've done, it's like covered in tiles. Everything is covered in tiles. Then you have these chain link fences, and you have layers and layers and layers of them. The whole thing is like a grid. It's like this unspoken geometry of the system. And what I was trying to emphasize through the book was to have this mass of lines contrasting with the organic form of the body, and them not fitting well together, to talk about how unnatural incarceration is and how unnatural it is for us to be in this kind of grid as a human being. So that's some of the kinds of visual decisions I'm making.
I know more questions. I want to maybe take a break just because I know some students have to go to class soon. So if you need to scoot, that's okay, but then we can continue the conversation too. Does anyone need to scoot? If you do, it's okay. I get it.
Pick out an action card. We need you in the campaign.
Hey, glad you're here.
Yeah, thank you. Glad y'all are here. Thank you. Glad you came. Action.
But let me know what you think.
Hey, thank you. Good.
Copy. I have that.
Yeah, you got one.
It's kind of fun to get to do something.
Go to Tom Ryan. Tom,
I left mine in Mark's office.
You could get,
I left signing
we'll pop.
Yeah, we've been
Thank
using
you.
the.
Did y'all get an action call? We need you, we need you.
Thank you for your visit. It was so great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did this.
This is a signing page. You want to get it from the artist
That many
too.
pages again. So I was a little
Thanks for
bit.
being here.
But I made my own pencil to work on Procreate because it was important to me that it had a.
Yes, it did.
He can bring in our proper pen, so I'll see if this works. All right.
I think so. Okay.
What's your name?
Yeah, I mean, my sister's
Stephanie? Yes.
Yep. Oh, man. Oh, isn't that neat?
But they did the text, the coding.
All right. Oh, that's so great. That's a good mama.
I'm sure you want Catherine's signature.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are you in design?
No, I just think it's really cool.
Oh, that's nice.
I love that. Been waiting my whole life for that.
Actually, why?
Here's some other patents.
Yeah, thick pen. Like, that's good.
Welcome. Thank you for coming. Erin,
Hello, how you doing? So Ashley, hi. Nice to meet you.
are you in the design of no.
Oh, that's
Thank you.
I'll do this in the same pen,
Sure.
so I
And you
don't
could get them to sign too.
outshine Catherine. I hope you enjoy
There's a
the
copy
book.
of some of these, too. I'm just gonna give these away.
Catherine, did you get one of these?
Oh, this is the death of innocence.
Hey, how you doing?
Thank you.
Okay, the river fires.
Aaron?
More about how.
Thank you.
What do
Good
you think,
reading.
Aaron?
Hey, so glad you were here.
Over my head. We so need accountants because a lot of artists and writers are desperately hopeless with that side of the world.
Okay.
Are you enjoying it?
I kind of beg, but come
What
on,
year?
come on.
How are you?
I'll believe you. I'll believe
So
you.
you stick around, if you're willing to stay and chat some more, you probably have more questions.
I'm glad you wanted to come to this.
I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, did you get an action card? Okay.
Well, I hope you enjoy this version of it. Yeah, pleasure.
Glad you were here
Hello.
today.
Who are you? Hey, Claire.
You
How
should
you
get
doing?
their autograph too.
I'm well. What do you
Thank
study?
you. Hey,
How do you
I'm doing
Yeah, I
good.
majored in
How are you
English.
doing?
Sydney University. Yeah, English and
Oh,
philosophy.
wow, yeah.
And then I retrained later as a computer programmer.
Yes, you did. Glad to be here.
So I use both. I do all system and social media and web.
I love that.
Yeah.
Been
so
waiting long. Get somebody to line it up.
I'm
Get somebody to take
so
it.
it all sort of
Okay,
comes
how was
together.
it?
Yeah. I hope you enjoy that. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello. I'm doing well. How are you?
All right.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Hey.
Oh, that's cool.
Good to meet you. What's your name?
Putting it in the book.
Good to be here.
I think I know the story so well because we've worked together for over 20 years that it was
Is
it
it
was almost
T-E?
natural
Oh, they.
to get it in there. And her words in the book, the original book, convey that well. And then I knew that
Thank you.
Catherine's illustration would bring you to that too. And you know, she's one of the big feelings she has is remorse at not helping the victims' families.
Thank you.
I've sort of seen that in action because I've worked in this area for so many years. So it was, yeah.
Glad you were here.
I'm also Helen's voice on social media. So
I'm yours. I'm at your service.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much for coming.
And yeah, it was really fun doing it. Yeah. Hello.
When I was younger,
I'm well. Who are you?
when I thought it was
8.
Right.
And
Good
what
work.
do you study? Oh, cool. Fun. operating literature. Oh, how wonderful. Isn't it brilliant? Yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. This is actually called, we need you. We need you. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. How good. Yeah, fantastic. All right, pleasure.
How what?
Hello, I have been admiring your style.
Yeah.
Josephine, hi. What are you studying? History. It's such a diverse bunch of things you're all studying. Have you got a particular period that you like? Oh, do you? I grew up in Australia. And
Because it's the same country.
how on earth did that happen? So ambitious to get to the US. So, very cool. You're taking classes? Yeah, right. Oh, cool. I hope you enjoy this book. Yeah, glad you're here. Are you a history person? English and math. Nice balance. Yeah, yeah. When I was little, I didn't know which way to go. You know, the English way or science and math and
I'm working. I mean, and I
and I'm
did.
very good at
And then
debate.
first
All my friends wanted me to be a
really scared.
lawyer, but I backed out. Yeah. And so do you prefer math or do you like them about?
Oh, you want to see? Okay. Yeah, thank you. Hey, great to meet you too. Did you get an action card? We need you for that campaign.
Lawyers write very badly. So that's a really good skill to have. Really good. Oh, my pleasure. Oh, do you? Which one? Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
Hey,
Well, I hope you
sweetie.
enjoy the book.
How are you?
Hello. How you doing? Very well.
Good for you.